This will be our final session for the day. We have a panel discussion, as you can see, and then also what we'd like to do is treat this as a question and answer period too. So if anybody has questions from earlier presentations or just a comment, it would be good. This is the time that we can all discuss. So let me introduce our panel. We have 3 creators here with us. Please welcome Sahar, Assaf, Hussein, Nakhal, and Nathalie Fallaha. Again, the pronunciation is difficult. So Sahar and Hussein are from Beirut 830, an independent theater company dedicated to expanding the boundaries of theater in Lebanon by producing new theater to new audiences. And Nathalie is the general manager and design principal at vit-e, which is a graphics art studio. And Nathalie participated in an interview on our website, just like Caesar did, and we encourage you to check that out. So without further ado, I think I'll give the floor to Nathalie, and she can begin our discussion.
Hello. Hello. Actually, as a designer myself, there are many issues we face in this field in terms of intellectual property and copyrights. I compiled here different examples, problematic examples, obviously, of intellectual property or plagiarism or very strong inspiration. In this case, what you see on the top level of this slide are 4 different logos that come from different parts of the world. 3 of them are related to design weeks, knowing that there's absolutely no affiliation between one and the other. And the 4th one on the right-hand side is for a real estate company in Portugal. Last year there was a big debate when Beirut Design Week launched their logo, launched the whole week as a manifestation and their logo. And basically the debate was how original their logo was versus inspired from what's out there around the world. Obviously there are many more samples that mimic this approach. But then the answer last year was, this is the trend today, so we're just riding on a trend. And my real question here was, how are you as Beirut Design Week standing out and setting an identity for yourselves, as opposed to, without really distancing yourselves from what's out there, whether it's, Dubai Design Days or Paris Design Week or anything else. Now, somehow, what happened this year, what you see on the bottom, is something completely independent from Beirut Design Week, and in this case, it's called Beirut Designers Week, and it's using the name of Beirut Design Week for something that's completely independent, which is purely commercial, whereby Beirut Design Week is a cultural and design manifestation, and right now they're both quarreling about who owns the name. And this is really fresh. The quarrel started officially yesterday. I caught this online. And in this case, the question I would like to ask here is, who is protecting whose name, and who can actually help, or what kind of body do we need to have in terms, I know I missed morning talks, but in such a case, would the organizers of Beirut Design Week have to go to their lawyer to make sure these people change the name of their event, or would they go with the usual Lebanese answer, it's okay, we get free publicity for something we're not actually promoting? aren't they worried about the confusion that might arise? Because for someone who doesn't know, the immediate reaction is that this is the same thing. Even though the ladies on the bottom are from some image bank, they're not even local, yet it's Beirut Design Week, Designers Week. So again, there's a real issue here in terms of how things are used, and I'm not going to say copied or plagiarized, I'm just going to say recycled into each other's project, reused rather than copied. So this is one example. Actually, I printed out, if we want to just as quick examples, I printed out those samples here. Now, yes, please. Doesn't matter. Okay, the next one is actually right now subject to a lawsuit. I don't know if you know of it. Again, none of this is my work or anything related to me. I'm just highlighting what's going on. The third case is something related to me, which I'll discuss also. What's on the left is the logo for S-Signature, a luxury concierge company. And their logo was designed a year and a half back or 2 years back by Impact BBDO. What you see on the right-hand side is a restaurant for Mr. Adis, who's a very famous Armenian musician, grew up in LA, seems has great cuisine, and basically they're both operating in exactly the same market, and apart from the name is the same and the logo is very much, I'm not going to say inspired, copied from the first one. And the excuse of the one on the right-hand side is that, yes, but we have a little red bird in there, you don't have one, so we didn't copy it. But obviously there's a real problem in the sense that even though the typeface is not the same, they took the same name and replicated something extremely similar to, for the layperson, it would look like it's S-Signature who opened the restaurant, rather than something completely independent. So, as we speak, the owner of the restaurant is trying to avoid changing his whole visual identity, and he's saying that he's away and he's very sick. So I have no idea about all that, but I know that there's a real case taking place between the two entities, but no solution yet, really. And the third case that I'm gonna also discuss before we move to other things and follow with the conversation. Alefia is a brand name and trademark that I own, which I launched two or 3 years ago. It's a lifestyle brand. And on the right hand, okay, you don't see a good copy here there, I just have a scan of the actual trademark file that we submitted and paid a lot of money to get to protect the name across different segments of interior design products, services, fabrics, stationery, you name it, many things. And all our products are actually named Alefia stool, Alefia chair, Alefia cushion, Alefia placemat, so on. So the whole point is for us to push the name. And I came across last week this company, Lebanese company, who does very nice things as well, called Kashida. And they called one of their products Alefia, bookend. So I called them up and I said, listen, I don't know you, but I know of you, you know of me. We graduated from AUB, both of us, been actors in the market. There's a problem that I'd like to bring up which is the following. And they said, no, but we have the right. I said, no, we didn't know. And then we have the right. And then talk to the lawyer. And then eventually, the last answer I got, you know what? Find us another name for our bookends and we'll be happy to change it. So, I need help with that. But just to tell you how lightly things are taken. And my answer was, as Alefia, we spent a lot of money already to protect our design and to protect our brand name and to really own everything we're doing and to make sure it's not replicated and plagiarized. And the answer I got was not really satisfactory, so now I'm looking for a name. Because I don't want to sue them because they're nice people. So this is a typical scenario of intellectual property breach and no solution and status quo. So,
Well, that's great. Now, again, I think we can have more of an informal discussion. So, does anybody have thoughts about that? Like, Mr. Nasser, you have, I mean, she brought up some interesting issues, perhaps copyright issues, perhaps trademark issues. And should we discuss? Yeah, I can bring you a microphone.
So here you invoked the different issues related to names of trademarks and other names. In fact, the first thing is to be taken into consideration is to know if there is effectively a risk of confusion in the mind of the public. If there is a risk of confusion in the mind of the public, so we should go to the other step. Who was the one who has owned the name first? So here, all the research should be done at this level. In fact.
okay. In all cases.
In all cases.
Okay.
There is a risk of confusion, yes or no. Who has owned the name first?
Okay.
Owned or used?
Okay.
It's more of a question for you now, given what you said. If I'm not mistaken, the Lebanese law allows two different brands to have the same name. Let's say Beirut 830 is Theatre Company, but I can open a restaurant and call it Beirut 830, right?
There is like classification. There is classes in the trademark domain. So it depends on the class you are registering your trademark on.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I can share a different scenario to what Nathalie just mentioned and share with you a little story about Beirut 830. When we started meeting and talking, Hussein and myself and the other founders, we had chosen the name of Aylul for Beirut 830. And for 2 years, we've been working on Aylul. It was, in our private meetings. We weren't public yet. But we were so attached to the name. We had the logo, we had the mission statement, we had everything. And then suddenly, someone informed us that 20 years ago there was a festival in Beirut called the Aylul Theatre Festival. And we had a lot of debates whether we keep the name or we change it, because I think by law it was okay for us to have the name, if I'm not mistaken, right? But then, because of what you exactly said, the confusion that we might create in the minds of the public, we decided that no, we must change the name. And then we went to Beirut 830. So, yeah, this is happening, and what Nathalie mentioned, of course, but some other scenarios are also happening. And I'm just curious about the function of censorship in Lebanon, especially when it comes to theater. I'm thinking now because in terms of intellectual property, when we submit a play to the censorship, they make sure that we're not mentioning, we're not attacking any political figure or religious figure, or we're not saying something that would, affect any of the status quo of the system, let's say. But they never question whether we're stealing or whether we're borrowing or being inspired by, other intellectual properties. So this could be also a door for a different kind of discussion, I guess.
Yeah, because when it comes to theater, it's exactly the same, but you have different trends. I mean, like nowadays, there's a trend when you go on stage and you do, like some movements and you call yourself a dancer, and this is it, and you present dance shows. And sometimes I've seen some performances in Beirut that was exactly copied from performances I've seen abroad, and this was really something, because the people in here, like, they don't research enough and they don't know. I mean, they only take this as a credible piece. And you're out saying, but it looks exactly the same as the other piece. And for them, if they didn't see the other piece, then it doesn't count. And this is a big question. I mean, like last time I faced something, I created a small performance. I presented in a house, and it was seen by 80%, and this was it, because I wanted this performance to be very restricted. And 2 months later in Beirut, I saw my scenography that was exactly copied the same on Al Madina Theatre in another performance. And so I was shocked. I mean, I was surprised. And the guy the guy was my friend. We're in the same university, in the same class. I couldn't even face the guy, but unfortunately I was expecting someone to write something about it, and they didn't even write it. And what bothered me more is that he didn't even think of the concept. He didn't even link the installation itself to the performance. He only copied it because he liked it. And this was bothering for me because I spent 2 months looking for it. And it's fine. But the other problem is what I notice normally, even when I'm working with my students, is that when I sometimes do something to them, like I act out something, they repeat it exactly the same. And so I say, what is your interpretation? And so for them, no sir, this is how it's act out. No, but this is acting. You can have plenty of propositions. And then, no. And so I always question myself, do we have an identity? And this is a big thing, because when you have an identity, you have to add your spices to whatever you're doing. And then this is it, because I never heard of copyright, to tell you the truth, and I didn't grow up with this mentality. I don't know it. I mean, all the time copyright. No, I didn't think about it. I mean, why do I have to go and register them? I mean, and this is a big thing because we don't know this concept. I think we lack the knowledge of this concept. Yeah.
In terms of copying, like we say copying is the biggest form of flattery, which, but I'm wondering in the sense of saying, is it, as being artists, or in theater, is it more of a question of getting credit for it, or is it a matter of actually having this taken away from you?
Well, in theater, it's your own baby. I mean, when you're working on a play, you spend like it's exactly like in design. You spend 4 nights or 10 nights or a month to develop a concept. And it's very hard knowing all the challenges that you face and all the competition it has. And sometimes it's very personal to an extent that when you see it somewhere else, you feel bad. You feel emotionally bad. And yeah, so it's emotion involved with business. And it's, yeah, I don't know if you got the credit for it to be happy.
Well, I was thinking of that, actually. I'm thinking out loud, because I think sometimes it's a matter of inspiration, true. Sometimes it's bad intention, someone is copying, for the sake of copying and for the lack of creativity. But sometimes we really, I mean, how many times you've heard people say, oh, I thought of that same idea, oh, yeah, that was creative. I mean, we're living in almost the same world and we get affected by similar stuff, so it might be totally a coincidence that you're doing something and some other people are doing the same thing. Well, that's I don't know how to deal with that. But then sometimes we've seen shows, theater performances here in Beirut that are not only inspired, but they use texts of international famous, play texts, and they gave no credit at all for the people who wrote these pieces. Yeah, I think because in the theater, like I guess like any field, but more because I come from a theater background and that's how I function. I think if you're a theater, you use theater to reflect on, your feelings, your experiences, your emotions, to influence, to change, I don't know what. So to do that, I think you have to start from being honest with yourself first. So it's also an ethical question for me. If you're doing something, if you're doing theater, especially in that very sensitive and critical field, you're on the stage, you're naked, right? Metaphorically speaking. So if you're not honest, if you're starting from a dishonest ground, that's a problem for me. How are you going to really reach out and touch the hearts of the audiences? So, but yeah, when it's inspired, I mean, we've seen plays where they say inspired by, I don't know, Milan Kundera's Ignorance, right? It was the last play. So it was more of an adaptation probably for the, I think we need to define the terms as well. When do you say inspired? When do you say adapted? When do you say it's copy-pasted.
I mean, I was an educator myself for 9 years at the LAU, and we had major issues with plagiarism and trying to explain what is plagiarism to students. And for instance, in terms of writing papers, the university got software to it's called Turnitin or something like that, where you upload all the papers and it gives you the percentage of borrowed text from those papers, and eventually above a certain threshold, it's dismissed. I mean, rejected. This is one example, but I also had a case once where I had given a brief to students, and I knew I know that the first thing that they'll do is that they'll go on Google, images, type in a word or two, and get results and start getting inspired, which is obviously not the right way to go about it. And once I had 2 students who copied the exact same thing from the exact same keywords from the exact same thing. And I wouldn't have taught one had the other one not shown the same thing. And eventually the university agreed with me to completely, not only F them on the project, but completely fake them the course and warning, because, I mean, it's bad luck for them that they presented the exact same copied thing.
But it's very interesting what you're saying, because I myself, I'm an illustrator as well. And sometimes I get brief. And sometimes the ad agency send us a brief, with the description and everything. And by the end of the brief, there's a section that's called references. And this is where they send you, for example, pictures of illustrators that work abroad. And then, okay, you take this and you see the essence of it, and you think design-wise, okay, they have this here, whatever, and you try to show them something that's similar, but it's your own make. And then they would reply and say, we were looking for exactly the same thing, exactly the same rendering, exactly the same features, exactly the same background. I mean, then why do you need me?
Commission that other illustrators.
So this is a very dangerous thing. I mean, especially with the type deadlines they give you. Sometimes you only say, okay, I'm doing it, so whatever. And this is very dangerous because you're forced to plagiarize as well. It's, yeah. So,
Yes.
Sorry, my name is Nasreen Haddad. I'm a specialized IP lawyer. I want to say something to Nelly, Nathalie, concerning the Alif Ya matter. You should not deal with it in this manner that you change your logo and your concept. You should sue them. You should claim your rights. It's our message to all innovators and people like you who have copyright ownership. They should claim their right. It should be taken like this. So you should claim your right.
I want to ask a question to the lawyers in here. Is there an accessible repository of information in English, not in law format, that we can have access to and understand how to go about different things without, at least to have a good understanding before ringing our lawyer and saying, is it in terms of Lebanese law? Is it by company or how does it work? Is there an official repository of this information?
I don't think there's an official inventory or something like this, but we have more articles which are published in the net, so we can consult them and have an idea about this.
there's one book, but it's only for copyright for books and written books for children and for illustrators. It's called It was published by from a personal. It was a personal thing, but I don't think there's a booklet.
There is also the LIPA, the Lebanese Intellectual Property Association. There is a guide on the internet, and there is a printed guide about intellectual property laws in Lebanon.
What was the name?
LIPA, Lebanese Intellectual Property Association. from several years, they worked on a guide on intellectual property laws in Lebanon. It's very helpful.
Also, you can consult the international organization like OPI, like all of these organizations. You can have an idea about intellectual property from the general principles that are published in the articles. We don't have a public or an official website for the Lebanese state yet, but there is a big, we have many articles which are published on the net.
For example, again, in terms of maps, I mean, I don't know if you know of Zawari Beirut, which is the A to Z of street map Beirut and Greater Beirut. And he's facing a lot of problems with people scanning his maps, putting in whatever they want on them, or even tracing them and changing the colors, except that he spent a fortune on GIS software to get his maps. He walked himself every single street in Beirut to get the names right, and sometimes he offers 2 names for a street, depends on how it's called, and people even get that, and he's spending his time suing people. I mean, unfortunately for him, because he needs to protect his asset. He spent a fortune to get his maps done, which is a first, and eventually people think that by taking this and then scanning it and tracing it, it becomes there, but it's not.
In fact, we see every day many violations of intellectual property rights here in Lebanon. So the problem is that we don't have this awareness that we have a full right of ownership concerning an immaterial thing. So the right of ownership related to the immaterial thing or immaterial item is very similar to a right of ownership for the immaterial thing. So we don't have this awareness. Some people would say that I will not get a DVD or a CD for $20. I can get it for $1 or $2. So when they say this, they are not aware that they are committing a penal infraction or a penal violation of law. So that's the problem, in fact.
Yeah, sorry.
In terms of, for you guys, when you talk about Lebanese designers with creativity, do you see difficulties, though, with people outside of Lebanon ripping off Lebanese products?
Yes, that.
How is that, how do you go about that as a Lebanese of going abroad and addressing the issue?
How do you go about that? I mean, honestly, we don't go about it. It just happens. I mean, mostly in the Arab region, there's a lot of borrowing taking place, and it depends where. I know for a fact that Egypt has a tendency, again, not the specific layers of the industry, not everyone, of course it is. I think it mostly happens in places that don't really have their own voice, visually speaking. And this is when you tend to look out much more thoroughly and to get your inspirations better framed to get something out. So I would say, going back to the issue of identity that you brought up, I think that the first and foremost problem is in relation to, as designers and as creative people, really being able to coin where do we stand, where do we come from, where are we right now, and where do we want to go. And without this self-introspection that happens really on an individual level, even before the group level, if this doesn't take place, then there's a problem. And all the work will be, all the output, whether it's music, whether it's a play, whether it's fashion, whether it's design, whether it's furniture, will be problematic. I mean, an issue that was brought up last year at a similar discussion, but not so formal, an informal setup talking about the specific issue of copyrights and plagiarizing, is that Zara, for example, buys samples from the big brands, vit-e and Prada and, gets them replicated with very cheap fabric, very cheap techniques of sewing, confection, adds its little detail on it, and then it's out on the market. And eventually, the answer of the big brands was great. Then our pieces become even more desirable, so will be even more expensive, so we'll make even more money. And is this right? I have no idea. I have no idea. But this is this big debate has been taking place between the big brands, not necessarily very luxurious even, just the established multinational brands, and then the Zara, which is also an established multinational brand, and even much bigger in figures, much bigger than anyone. But is this a sane way to go about it? Is this a legal way to go about it? I have no idea. I have no idea. We all wear Zara, I do, and I don't have a problem. But I know that there's a problem in how their R&D departments are for the best copiers or the best reappropriators, not for fashion designers. So, question.
And this is really interesting. Going back to the map example, copyright law protects the expression of ideas and not the idea itself. And the map is actually a really good example. You can't copyright the layout of the streets, right? That's more or less the idea. The expression, the work that he went to do this and created this map, that can be protected, and that's a very good point because of all that effort that's put in. So this is one of those points about copyright. Additionally, we talk about fashion. This is another interesting example. In the United States, there's been a push over the past few years, perhaps to give certain protection to fashion designs. In the United States, we don't have specific laws to protect fashion. Now, there are a few intellectual property concepts that come into play. Copyright is one when we talk about fashion. We also have something called design patents that come into play, and trademarks too. So there are many different intellectual property approaches or many different concepts that could come into play here. But I'm really encouraged by this discussion because these are, questions that a lot of people have, especially as a creator. These are the things we should be talking about. I guess one more example would be talking about performing arts. And Hussein, you talked about you performed in front of, 80 people? What, 8? Oh, 80.
80.
Yeah, 80. Was your performance recorded at all? Did anybody videotape?
Yeah, it was photographed.
Photographed, okay. Very interesting because dance is I think a good kind of example to talk about. Now, if somebody is to perform a dance or perform something in front of us, if nobody records it or takes a picture, the question is, does copyright apply? And I would say no, because copyright, it has to be fixed in a tangible medium. So you bring up an interesting point. I mentioned indigenous peoples earlier, and we talk about indigenous traditions, and so they may have a traditional dance that they perform. And the question is, if that has never been recorded or never fixed in a tangible medium, then copyright protection does not apply, does not exist. However, photographs, for instance, there's definitely copyright. So this is not an easy kind of cut and dry example of whether copyright applies. But then you make a very good point about it copying. Right. The question is, what is your legal right in this case? Well, that depends, but what is the role of copying and what is appropriate? And do you think, in Lebanon, in this part of the world, is copying more accepted? I mean, it seems to me that you've said that a lot of people borrow from each other. So do you think this is something that's cultural? Is it, is this going to be something that's difficult to change?
Well, I think, I'm facing this even with my students. I told you, the concept of creation, the concept of owning something, it doesn't exist unless it's materialistic, unless I own my iPhone, I own my, I don't know what. But like the conception of an idea or bringing or coming up with an idea is not really, I mean, even like last time there was this, I don't remember, it was Breeze or what was the thing, that was an ad. And it took a huge reputation in Lebanon, and then it turned out it's plagiarized completely, it's copied. And this was something, I mean, yeah. Okay. And yeah, because like, especially this ad, I'm bringing it up because I heard people like all the time for 2 months, everyone was saying Mashay wa Shabab, I don't know what. It was the slogan for this ad. And I was mesmerized the day I read the article about it. I mean, we were copying even the term of it. And even we didn't have an identity we didn't do a selection, we don't have a censorship over what we're seeing. Okay, it's an idea and it's relevant, it was relevant in the States in 19 something. It was so old. And even all of this retro vintage wave, like everybody's producing practically the same work because they are having the same inspirations, because they are having the same trend, and this is it because it's working. The vintage items are the trend today. Everybody's going vintage. And so suddenly you stand up and say, okay, there's no designer that's not going vintage. I mean, all the designers are going into vintage and into retro things, and all the theater people are going into body movement, and this is very strange. I mean, I think we're lacking a very strong awareness and identity. A Lebanese identity. I mean, by the time, at least I can speak for theater, we had very good writers for theater. We had George Hadi, we had too many people, too many names, and that wasn't very, it was in 70s, late 70s and 60s, and even Ziad al-Rahbari and all this place and all the innovation and all the spirit, and now we have nothing. All we have is international caliber performance that most probably are copied.
What I wanted to add to what you just said is it's not only local. I think it's an international trend. It's the ease and access to information and to logos, which makes it easier on all the upcoming designers. Instead of just coming up with drawing something, being Lebanese or any other nationality, they just Google it out and then they say, okay, this is in Lebanon, nobody's going to see it here, so it doesn't matter, just do something similar, or this is in Paris, etc. So I think it's more of an international trend and the ease of access to information makes it easier to copy.
So, oh yes, coming from software industry, I would like to highlight two experiences that are really helpful in this respect. Actually, the first experience is the revolution created by Steve Jobs and Apple, so the concept of the Apple Store or the App Store or iTunes, where he was able to do two very important things when it comes to content consuming. He made it accessible first, so everybody in the world can actually access this content easily, and he made it cheap, so you can download a song of iTunes for 99 cents. So going to this place it might be relevant actually to this discussion, because making you as creators, making your content as accessible as possible and as cheap, the word, as accessible in terms financially and visually as possible might really help actually, and believe me, as a software developer, I know that the concept of app stores and marketplaces actually diminished the plagiarism by a very huge, you don't need actually right now to, very few people actually tend to steal a 99 cents application, because it's, it happens in Lebanon, but it's serious. In general, the concept of app stores actually diminished plagiarism by a very, very big, it didn't end it, but it diminished it into a very big extent. The second concept, again from the software industry, is the open source concept, where many people, just for the sake of either being known as a good developer, for example, they put their work online, just for the sake of something like the MIT license, for example, or they only want from you to mention their name and your credits, and that's it. You can do whatever you want, buy my code, just mention my name. This model was pretty much very, very successful, because usually when somebody downloads your work and uses it, he'll get back to you for more, for example, customization of this application. So first of all, you'll be known, so this is a marketing monthly trip for you. And the secondly, you'll be contacted again for some sort of additional work related to that initial basic open source concept. These are the ideas that I wanted to share.
We have something which is similar in the art field. You have the Creative Commons. Yeah, I have the Creative Commons, and it's practically similar. And even online, like everything that's been there, I mean, sometimes you take pictures and you use them in the design or in the illustration. Yeah, you need to credit them. But sometimes even the source is not credited. Sometimes you find it randomly online. And I don't know what's the rule. I myself, I don't know.
I mean, technically, you're not allowed to use someone else's work without either crediting it if it's available for free, but you need to credit it, or actually buy a license to use it. I mean, I use many image banks from all around the region and the world, and I mean, very often clients say, oh, let's use this one, can you retouch the watermarks? And no way, even if I could, there's no way I would do that to save you $50. Or even $500 if you can
afford this.
Then don't take the photo yourself, hire a helicopter and take an aerial view of Riyadh or whatever. But so eventually, I mean, if you want, as a keeper myself on a certain project, I make sure there are no trespassing taking place, because sometimes even the team with me might try to navigate around certain codes just to go faster, and obviously it work.
You have an awareness of these issues, right? And so, how did you develop this awareness that you shouldn't be just taking an image from the internet? I mean, so you learned this.
Yes.
How did you talk about it?
I mean, at the university, they were very keen on explaining all those things to us, that as students, it's okay to use a photo in a project, in a school project, as long as you credit it, but as a professional, you're not allowed to. And there's a big issue nowadays with us designers, which is the use of typefaces. Today, I have many friends who are type designers who spend years developing one typeface that costs a lot of money when you buy it, and most design houses and ad agencies in this part of the world, not just in Lebanon, use copy fonts. And for me, honestly, it's only a few years back that I started to actually purchase fonts, because it's very expensive, I couldn't afford it. Now I justify it in certain projects, but I'm aware of it and I credit it, and at least I've been aware, but I couldn't do much. I mean, I couldn't spend €1,000 on a family of typefaces. So, that I wanted to use for a specific project. But now I'm starting to actually replenish a real library of fonts, of own fonts. But I know that my employees will take them and circulate them for free. It's okay. I mean, I can't block them from doing that. And I know that the printing presses who get the fonts will also recirculate them to young designers who want that. Which is a very unfortunate thing, but that's another very big issue in terms of paying rights for someone who spent years working on something. So, yeah.
Do you guys have any thoughts about that? When did you kind of start to have an awareness of intellectual property rights and what's appropriate, what's not appropriate?
See, I have a very similar experience. I studied my BA at the Lebanese University, where I had no clue at all. But then I moved into AUB and I did my master's degree, and that's where I started realizing that, yes, I cannot just simply borrow sentences or paragraphs or research of other people and claim it's mine. So it's basically at the university, and AUB makes it really an important issue, like plagiarism is not acceptable. So, but here again, see, now I'm thinking, why at the Lebanese University nobody told me that? See? And it takes me back to your question about the culture, and I think it has to do with the culture and the lack of awareness, as Hussein mentioned. It's not, you don't hear people, thinking about that or paying attention to it, or just simply respecting others people's work and property. And I had an incident that I can share with you guys really quick. In 2009, I did a movie, research. It started as a research on Lebanese women fighters in the Civil War. I was doing a master's degree, a professional master's degree in psychosocial animation. And within 3 months, I found around 7 women who accepted to be interviewed by me, and then 4 of them agreed to be filmed. And I had a handy cam, and I went and filmed the 4 women with my friends. I had 0 budget, and then I paid some money to do the editing, and eventually I had a 20-minute documentary film that toured Beirut cafes. So we had youth coming in, sitting and watching the film, and at some points we had some of the women with us to talk about the aftermath of the war and their involvement in the war. And then after that, a director from Al Jazeera TV contacted me and said, I'd like to see the movie, maybe we can work together. I was like, yeah, sure, here's my number, call me. And he sent me a message saying, why don't you keep the film at one of the cafes and I'll pick it up, and if I like your work, I will contact you. I was like, really? I mean, this is like a baby for me now. When artists say it's a baby, it's really a baby because the delivery process is as painful as hard. So it was really my baby, and I was like, no, at least you have to be a little bit professional, and don't even say that. So I was really harsh on him. Eventually, he went on sending journalists asking me about the numbers of these women, and I was like, you know what, I don't own the women, right? They became my friends, and it's their life, they choose to tell it to whoever they want. But I was really annoyed and sad by the fact that some people are trying to steal my research, because he eventually did the film, and it went on Al Jazeera, and he talked about the 2 pivots that I covered, gender in war and their memories. I couldn't do anything, it happened. I was sad, but what, consoled me a little bit is that 2 of the women that were in my movie refused totally to speak to this guy, without even knowing what's happening. So it is in the culture, it is in this system, I guess, and raising awareness would really help. At least people will have it in the background of their minds now and think, oh, maybe I should just, give some credit, just say I was inspired.